Granny teaches the cashier who lectures her when she asks for plastic bags at a grocery shop a lesson.
But before we start, please take a moment to give this video a like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you'll never miss these great stories.
With the advent of new technology, the gap between the generations has widened infinitely. This has created a difference in the thoughts of the younger generation. The values that were taught to them are fading out day by day, and due to this, they have started to think that they are better than others. A young cashier had the same illusion, but her bubble burst when she met this old lady. What the lady did was something less imaginable, and everyone present there was stunned. Dorothy is an aged woman with a simple mindset, having a sense of least dependence on others and getting the things done on her own. Her expectations from life are simplicity and ease of work. But does it always happen as we think it would? Her day started like the others. She used to shop in bulk so that she could save time and money. The idea was the more she bought per shopping session, the less she would have to shop in total. According to her, this was meant to be another usual day at the store, but one person changed everything. She never prioritized riding around on one of those motorized shopping carts or have groceries delivered to her door. She handled it all by herself. As she went from shelf to shelf around the store with her cart, she filled it up with a variety of products from cosmetics and packaged food to fruits and vegetables. Dorothy's shopping was going pretty well. She had visited the supermarket a number of times and had no trouble finding all the things she required and wanted. Keeping the confusion aside, what's needed and what wasn't. Her trip to the market was a success. Although after having so much confusion and walking, she completed her shopping and proceeded to the cash counter to get the groceries billed and end her session there. Even the queue at the billing counter seemed to be moving quickly. As she slowly pulled up to the front of the billing counter, she started unloading her stuff, and the cashier didn't look pleased and looked at her with a sigh, as it's probably the biggest load she had ever dealt with that day. After scanning all the stuff with a laid-down expression, the cashier asked Dorothy how many carry bags she required for the stuff she purchased. Deep down, she didn't know how many plastic bags she'd be requiring. With that dilemma in mind, she started packing the stuff on her own. Dorothy started to load her stuff. The cashier started helping the confused Dorothy, and while doing so, irritably said, "You should bring your own bags, as plastic is not safe for the environment." The old woman was startled by this comment. She had been going there for years, but never got commented on this thing. She never expected any of their staff to treat her in such a way, so for her it was a bit of a surprise. So she looked in the eyes of the cashier, who was aware of the fact that she had turned her focus toward her, and with a very polite tone, Dorothy apologized and said, "We didn't have these green things in my earlier days." Instead of accepting the apology, the cashier replied in a very rude way, "This is the problem for our generation now, as your generation didn't care to save the environment for the future generation." The lady was surprised by this, and surely she had had enough. With this rudeness of the cashier, Dorothy thought of teaching her a lesson and said, "Back in our days, we used to return the milk bottles, the soda bottles, to the shop, and the store sent them back to the plant where they get cleaned and sterilized and then get refilled. So we did recycling back then, but we didn't have this green thing." She told the cashier the grocery stores used to bag our groceries in paper bags that we used for various things. But too bad that we didn't have this green thing back then. The look on the face of the cashier was more surprising than the speech itself. Dorothy continued her statement by sharing a memory. Most memorable besides household garbage bags was the use of brown paper bags as book covers for our school books. This was to make sure that public property, the books provided for use by the school, was not defaced by our scribblings. Then we were able to personalize our books on the brown paper bags. She was explaining to the cashier, and more crowd was getting together in the line. It was obvious that the cashier was more keen to attend other customers than listening to her, but her speech had almost likely made a connection with some of the customers in the queue, and her conversation with the cashier had become impressive. The lady's points were reasonable and valid. The woman continued to tell her more about the way of life back in her days, expressing how simple but effective it was, and reusing and recycling of materials were practiced even way back then. So everyone standing there was listening to her as they found it interesting. It looks like they were not in a hurry to leave. She kept explaining the girl about how good were the old days and how they lived a healthy life than today in certain terms. She said, "We walked upstairs because we didn't have an escalator in every store, an office building. We walked to the grocery store and didn't climb into a 300 horsepower machine every time. We had to go 2 blocks. But you know what? You're right. We didn't have this green thing in our days." The lady was right. It is true that back then people lived a healthy and fit life than this generation due to their way of life. People used to walk miles and climb stairs as they didn't have the technology like today. The lady kept on talking. "We used to wash the baby diapers as we didn't have the throwaway type back then, and wash our clothes by hand instead of washing machines at their time. We don't rely on machines for our work." After taking a break to catch her breath, she continued, "Back then we used to dry our clothes online because we didn't have some 220-volt energy-gobbling machines to complete our work. We weren't used to waste the energy and electricity on that, but we didn't have the green thing at that time." Dorothy was making some legitimate and logical points which attracted more crowd than before, and in no time there was a lot of people standing. That seemed like regular rhetoric at the market became an interesting discussion. The television has become a part of the nuclear family over the years since after coming into the market in the 50s. We had one TV or radio in the entire house, not in every room like today, with a screen of size of a handkerchief, not the size of the state of Montana. At one moment, she realized that she was keeping the crowd too long, but once she saw the smile on their faces, she got aware of the fact that they were also interested in this. She had managed to charm her audience and was ready to make her speech more interesting for them. With that, Dorothy decided to continue talking. Every time there were new points and topics to start on. She started with the kitchen, this time saying that in their time they used to stir and blend things by hand instead of electrical appliances. And to make her point, she showed her flexible hand, and some of the customers laughed at this. The lady made herself clear that today there are various electrical appliances to do the work which they have done with their hands, and technology today is making the younger generation weak and lazy. Back then, we don't fire the engine and burn gasoline to cut the lawns. We used push mowers that run on human power, she said. It is true today even our lawn is cleaned by the power tools, which are only making us less active. The lady commented that we exercise by working, so we didn't need to go to a health club to run on treadmills that run on electricity. But you're right, we didn't have the green thing back then. In a way, this is the better way to stay fit, as it doesn't feel like you're doing typical exercise. The lady spoke about how they used to take public transport to travel instead of carrying their personal vehicles, and how that was useful to the environment. She wasn't done with the transport reasons, so she continued how taking public transportation helped to cut the traffic and make the city cleaner, and how it helped to keep the pollution low as fewer vehicles on the road meant less damage to the environment. Back then, people took the streetcar or a bus, and kids rode their bikes to school, or walked instead of turning their moms to a 24-hour taxi service in the family's $45,000 SUV or van, which cost what a total house did before the green thing, the lady told. She was rounding different topics, and this time she took the conversation to the smartphones. We had one electrical outlet in a room, not an entire bank of sockets to power a dozen appliances, and we didn't need a computerized gadget to receive a signal beam from satellites 23,000 miles out in space to find the nearest burger joint. This made a few of the customers laugh again. The lady spoke about how they used to spend time with their family and talk to each other about their day, but now everybody is interested in the phone. It seems that the phone has become an extension of a person's body. Nobody can go anywhere without bringing their phone. The conversation made the cashier speechless, and the lady gathered her goods and made way for the next customer. The cashier was completely knocked by what just happened. She was done with her speech, and she looked towards the cashier for one last time, who was standing there quietly and astonished. And after that, the lady left the shop without any backward glance. The cashier was regretting and ashamed about Dorothy's reaction on the plastic bag comment. Usually, she was used to getting the last word and telling other people how they should live, and now she was thinking about how it could lecture her so much. Dorothy left the store and made her way to the car. She was quite relieved and at the same time anguished towards the thought of the younger generation. She was feeling a little tired after her big performance and wanted to rest. However, the lady was unaware of the fact that someone has made the clip of her speech, as it was quite a remarkable speech, and as she drove home, she was unaware of what surprises were about to come next. 2 days later, Dorothy made her internet debut. The video of the lady's speech went on the internet and someone had recorded the scenario, and it seems it made more sense than the incident itself. The video went viral, and within no time, crossed 2 million shares, showing that the customers weren't the only ones to enjoy the incident, showing that there are some people who aren't just interested in gossips. The speech has reached the hearts and showed that some people are concerned about the environment and they remember how things used to be, and how simple life was, and how it used to cause less damage. It showed that people who were commenting on the thread were concerned about the environment and were aware of how things were better before. Dorothy's speech struck a chord with the heart of the listeners and with those who were concerned, and they are taking the steps to do what needs to be done towards this plastic waste. That one single speech made a wider effect in no time, and more people came up with a suggestion and steps were taken to create a better future. The global community didn't just smile and nod at her message. They actually stood up and decided to make a difference for the better of our planet. Her speech was humble, but holds great meaning. It made a huge difference in the perception of the people and was changing their views towards the environment. Along with changing the perception about nature, it also falsified the myth that the old generation is responsible for today and did nothing to save the world. She proved that they were also concerned about the environment, and her generation did their best to save it. People are not aware of how much their activities are causing, like the industrial sector. The damage industries are causing are worse than before. They are killing nature at high speeds. Things have changed a lot in the past time, from fresh to polluted air, from sitting together to chat rooms on mobiles, and from parks to the gym. There is nothing left like before. This is not the place it used to be. The speech taught one more thing to the viewers, and that was to respect our elders, because what we are and what we have is all because of them, and they have much more knowledge and experience. The lady has proved that being old means they need extra credit along with respect, and her point and views deserve that. She became a mentor to a lot of people and taught them how to stand for themselves. Her opinion, her experience, the points, and her view proves that she is a different and cool grandma, not a regular grandma. An ordinary grandma with some extraordinary opinions, which makes her different from others. I hope you like this article about the courage and passion of the lady and the change which had come in all these years to us, to this environment, and we hope that we will get those days back someday. The environment will get better and the use of plastic will end.